right. Well, thank you very much for joining me today on this special occasion. I am glad that I'm able to be with you today. Javier is needing a chair, right? Okay, so my name is what? Ludwig von Beethoven. That's right. I am considered one of the most famous composers of the classical period. And I was born in Bonn, Germany in the year 1770. My family was a traditional family that was a family of musicians. And my family belonged to the court orchestra. So we served the king, right? So we would have a court, like the royal court, and they would play music for that royal court. And my grandfather was a famous music player, and my father was a singer for the court. Unfortunately, my father was also a heavy drinker, but he quit drinking when I was born. And then when his father, my grandfather, died, he went into some depression and he started drinking again, quite a bit. Unfortunately, this meant that when he was drinking, he wasn't working and he was no longer supporting the family at that point. So our family continued to get poorer and poorer at that point. So that was very sad. When I was very little, you like that picture of me? Yeah. So cute, right?
Yes.
Yeah. When I was very little, I learned to play the piano from my father. That was very common at that time, that if your parents played any kind of instrument, they would have you play that instrument as well. The problem is I hated the piano. I hated playing the piano, but I played anyway because I knew that this was what my father wanted me to do. One day, the director of the court orchestra, so that was the person that was in charge of directing all those instruments to play together. The court orchestra director came and visited my house, and at this point, I was playing the piano both day and night. I was practicing a lot. Does anyone here practice day and night their instrument? Yeah, you play? Play quite a bit? That's good. It means it helps you to be able to continue to progress much better, right? So, he came and saw me playing, and eventually I was called by him and praised for my music skills on the piano, and I was playing for the court at that time. My skills had now outgrown the teachings of my father, so I definitely passed him up in my skill level. So my father said, I think it's time for you to get a good piano tutor to continue to work with you. So this new teacher's name was Piper, and he really helped me to learn how interesting the piano could be. Have you ever noticed as you continue to get better at something, you start to enjoy it more, right? With music or even with a sport, right? Or something like that. When you start to get really good at it, it's like, wow, I'm really enjoying this now. And he taught me a lot about the piano, and I really started to enjoy playing because of this. After my first music tutor moved on, I got another music teacher who taught me how to compose music. And what does that mean, to compose music?
Make.
To do what?
Create.
Create music, right? To write it down so that other people can also play the music that you come up with, right? It's something that's created by you. So he taught me all about how to compose music. By the way, composing music back then was a little bit harder than it is today, right? Because you'd have to write it all down by hand, right? Yep. And now we can just print it off the computer, or we can type it all up on there, move notes around, very easy. But back then it was a lot more challenging. But they also didn't have TV back then, right? And YouTube was just becoming a thing. No. So they had a lot more time to think and to have some quiet time, right? Is it quiet anymore? Usually not, right? Not in our day. So he also taught me about how to play the organ. Have you guys seen an organ before?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so an organ is a nice, powerful musical instrument that looks like the piano, but it has what? Two sets of keys on it, right? Okay, we can change all the sounds on it and everything. So at this point, my musical abilities were improving day after day because I was not only practicing, but really enjoying playing music. And I started to play the organ at the court church at the request of my teacher. So after the king heard me playing the organ, what did the king say before when he heard me playing the piano? He's like, that's good stuff, Beethoven, right? So now he heard me playing the organ, and after hearing me play, he promoted me to the second organ player for the church at the court. And my mom was really impressed with me getting that position because I was only 10 years old. And they made me the second person on the organ. So that was a very big thing. That was a big promotion. Unfortunately, one day my mother collapsed after having pneumonia. What's pneumonia?
When you get really cold and stuff.
Ammonia is a lung disease.
Yeah, it's a lung. So our lungs kind of fill with fluid, makes it really hard to breathe, and we cough a lot, right? So that wasn't good. So I now needed to provide money for the household. And one of the reasons I needed to provide money for the household is because what? What was my dad doing?
He was being drunk.
Drinking, right? So he wasn't working. So because of that, I needed to start making income for my household. There was a noble lady, so that was someone of the court, that came to me, and she helped me to understand life a little bit different because things weren't going very well for me at that time, right? Because my mom was sick, my dad wasn't really taking care of us, and I was trying to learn music at that time, but I was also having to now work and help provide for the family. But this lady told me, she said, the true wealth is not money, but the human heart, right? So it's what comes out. That's what's really important. Later on, when I was 16 years old, I'll get into that in just a second. I want to play one song on here. Is John Millar here today? No, he's not here? No. Okay. Does anyone in here have a song that they have prepared for today? A Beethoven song. Okay. All right. Jared, why don't you come over and play? He's going to play Ode to Joy for us.
Jeremiah, if you have something, find it.
Good job.
Jeremiah has something.
All right, Jeremiah is also going to play for us. You can just put that music off to the side here. Yep. You're start with the left hand first. So pinky's going to be down on your bass C. Yep, there you go. So pinky's right there. Third finger's going to start. And then this thumb is going to be right there. So left hand first. D, C, C. one more person to play that same song for us. This is Samuel. Samuel, how old are you? 4, good. Okay, Samuel's going to play that same song for us. And Samuel, you're going to start on E, okay? Good job. Samuel learned how to play that all by himself. We didn't teach him. He just went over to the piano and he loves that song. So he figured out how to play it all by himself, right? Yes.
That picture of Beethoven looks like the picture of Mozart.
Yeah.
He kind of does, right?
He was identical.
Okay, so I'm going to play another song in here that's very well known called Für Elise, right? A lot of people like to play that song, so I'm going to play that for you now. Very pretty song, isn't it?
I love that song. Listen to it all the time. Pretty.
All right, so later when I was 16, I had the opportunity to meet someone that you guys got to meet very recently,
Haydn.
Mozart. I got to meet Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. With the help of my current teacher, I was able to meet him. I was very surprised after listening to how well Mozart could play the piano. And then I was very excited when Mozart praised me for my own piano skills, and that was quite the accomplishment, a compliment coming from Mozart, saying how well I could play the piano. Unfortunately, at that time, my mother's condition was getting much worse, and she was now critical condition at home. And I was so sad that I began to neglect my music, and I was having some sorrow for my mom's condition and eventually death. What does that mean when we neglect something? What does that mean?
Like
Not pay attention to it.
not paying attention to it,
Abuse?
not abusing it, but just like forgetting it, like putting it to the side, right? Okay, so I wasn't really paying attention to my music because I was dealing with my mom and her death, and also what?
Not playing.
Not playing, right? Yes.
And his dad.
Yeah, and my dad and all of the problems that we had there. So, while I stayed in Germany, I supported my family during that time by playing and composing for several wealthy individuals that were willing to pay me for doing that for them. So that helped me to care for my family and to support my two younger brothers at that time with those various music jobs. 4 years later, I also heard about my friend Mozart's death. And that was a very big shock to me. It made me very sad because I thought there was no one else that could teach me music the way that Mozart could, and that wonderful music. But then I found out I could continue learning Mozart from another person that you learned about, Haydn, or Haydn, right? With the help from my teacher again, he introduced me to Haydn. So Haydn came to Bonn, Germany, and met with me and said that I should move to Vienna and that he would continue to teach me music, which I agreed to. What an amazing opportunity to be able to study under such a wonderful composer and a musician. So when Mozart died, people said that I should continue on in his style of music and playing and help his spirit to continue to move on through my music and my abilities. No pressure or anything, right? Okay. But because of this, a lot of my early music was very much inspired by Mozart and had a style similar to Mozart in my playing. And I also studied a lot of Mozart's music at that time, so I could continue to get better and better with my own abilities. After this, I returned to Vienna and became one of the most famous piano players. Unfortunately, at this time, I contracted some sort of a ear disease, and my hearing started to get bad, and eventually to the point where I was completely deaf. Now, we just saw a little 4-year-old boy over here playing Mr. Samuel, right? And Samuel has a hearing disability too. So he's completely deaf in one ear, but he loves music and he loves playing the piano. And he wants to do this. He's very encouraged by music. He's making goofy faces over there right now. So it could be definitely a problem if you start losing your hearing as a musician, right? Because you really need your hearing to be able to hear what you're playing, right? If you think that you sat down at one of these digital pianos and I just turned the volume all the way down and said, okay, go ahead and play your music now, you'd be like, but I can't hear anything. How am I supposed to make music, right? So it was like that for Beethoven, where he could play on the piano, but didn't have that joy of being able to hear it when he eventually had gone completely deaf. One of his famous pieces, Moonlight Sonata, which I'm going to play a little bit for you in a few minutes here, he closed the top of the piano, and then he laid his ear on the piano, and he would play it so that, and then he would feel the vibrations come through his head so he could kind of hear the music that he was playing at that time. So at this point, I accepted my fate that I'm going to be deaf for the rest of my life. And that deafness meant I could no longer hear any of the music that I played, so I was no longer performing any of my own music for other people. But I did continue to conduct my own orchestras for a while. So conducting an orchestra would have all these different instruments, and then I would conduct to make sure that everybody stayed together. Even if I couldn't hear them, they were watching me for the cue because I was looking at the music and I was directing what I could hear in my head. After several of my symphonies, someone would have to actually physically take me and turn me around to see the audience clapping and having huge applause for the performance of that orchestra, that masterful performance. So after coming to grips with this new reality that I could no longer hear, I also started looking at some of my earlier composed works and said, that's not the best that I can do. And because of this, I had a new passion for creating some very large pieces of music. In fact, some of my most incredible pieces of music happened when I was either almost fully deaf or deaf completely. So it's amazing some of the music that I was able to create with no hearing at all. Now, how could I compose all of this music without being able to hear it? What do you think, Zori?
Keeping it in your head.
Keeping it in my head, that's right, yes.
Perfect pitch.
Perfect pitch was part of it too. What does perfect pitch mean? Anybody? So,
Is it when you only
Javier?
listen to something once and you just memorize it from there?
Right, so being able to have that tone in my head. So if I said, ah, and said, oh, that's C, or just being able to hear it. I know it's not C, but that would be pretty exciting if it was. But anyway, so that would be perfect pitch. Being able to hear a note and tell you exactly what it is. It means to be able to internalize those sounds. So that's how he was able to write music for entire symphonies. Remember, I'm not just writing it for a piano, I'm writing it for a whole bunch of different instruments that have to be able to play together and have a good sound that blends together. He was able to do all of that with having no hearing. So one of my last performances was my 9th symphony, which included the 4th movement of it, which you just heard today, which is Ode to Joy. So that's part of the way of why I was able to compose such great music, even while being deaf eventually. Now, what does this tell us? It says that even if you have kind of a hard home life coming up, right? Where his dad was drinking and wasn't very nice, right? We see a lot of written records that his dad was a very mean person, okay? And even with that, and him losing his hearing, which a musician, that's one of the things they'd be very afraid of. It's kind of like a singer losing their voice, right? But even with all of that, Beethoven is still known as one of the greatest composers and musicians in history. And we still play his music today. I'm going to play a couple more of the famous pieces of Beethoven next. Do we have anybody else in here that has a piece of music that they're going to play for us? I'm going to have Miss Lauren come up next, and she has a piece of music that she's going to play for us.
No, she's turning it right now.
Okay, so Lauren is going to play one of our sonatas. A sonata is a piece of music written for one instrument. I'm now going to play some of the most famous pieces of music, and some of these seem like you could probably play them, right? And some of them are very difficult, right? So that's what we're going to listen to next. We've heard this one already, right? Okay, here's one a little harder.
I've heard that.
Moonlight Sonata, very famous piece. This is one of the ones he would lay his head on the piano as he was playing it so that he could kind of hear the music when he was losing his hearing.
It sounds sad. Right?
Have we heard a Turkish march before? By another composer?
Was it?
I think Haydn did Turkish march, right? Okay. So Turkish march. So in that time period, Turkish music was becoming popular. Everybody wanted to play some Turkish music. So a lot of different composers would create a song that said Turkish something or Turkish march. So what's that called? Rage over a lost penny. If you lost a penny, would you be really upset about it? No. So this is kind of a humorous piece, right? But someone's getting all upset because they lost a penny. That's the easy part right there.
Right?
music was originally written for an orchestra, which means what? What's an orchestra? Whole bunch of different instruments playing together, right? So he's going to try and show you that whole orchestra piece on the piano. So he's got to hit a lot of notes, right? All this was easy up till now, right?
No.
No.
I know the first one.
Maybe the first two were easy.
Expert.
Now you see it says the best coda ever written. A coda is a special ending to a song. Kind of a show off, wasn't it? Okay. All right.
Impossible.
Here's the level 12.
No, impossible.
Wait, did he also make the Rush E? Level 1?
No, she was asking
Yeah. So it's going into
So,
a different mix
so
with
did
that.
he do Rush E?
us. No, So what did you do?
Okay, so one more thing that I wanted to show you is Symphony number 7, Opus number 92. So this is one of my favorite pieces, and this song means a lot to me because when I was in Iraq and there were missiles hitting buildings around me, and you could hear things crumbling and things falling away and all of the noise, I was listening to this with an MP3 player because it was calming to me. So I'm going to play this last piece for today. Did I nail the hair? Did I get it?
Yeah,
I think so.
I think so.
You gotta comb.
This is a much quieter part, right? It's kind of like playing piano and then playing larger volume going up. You hear how it's swelling now, right? It's crescendoing. amazing music, isn't it? Okay. So what would you say is your favorite piece that you've heard so far?
For at least.
For Elise, you like that one?
I like the Turkish march.
Turkish March, yeah, that's a fun one. And the other Turkish March was Mozart. He's the one that did the other one. Zori?
Or Ames.
For Elise, yeah.
I like that one.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite. I just love it because it swells, right? It starts out real quiet and then it builds and builds and builds, right? Did you have one, Brady?
The moon one.
Moonlight Sonata, yeah. Do you like the first movement?
Yes.
Bum, 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 right? And then the third one's a da 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 bum, right? That's a fast one. Yep. How about you, Jeremiah?
I already said it. Oh, mine was the
Moonlight Sonata, you like that one? Yeah, that's a really good one. Yeah. We had one of our students play all three movements of Moonlight Sonata. It was like 27 minutes long. He did that for, I think 2 recitals ago.
I think I
He
remember
did the
that.
entire thing. Really impressive. That's a lot, and he did it all from memory. He memorized the entire
I
thing.
remember.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for joining me today. David, you can go ahead and stop the recording.